Hi, everyone. What, might you ask, is the connection between an Orthodox saint and Harry Potter? Well, as tenuous as the connection might seem, there is indeed one. For Harry Potter movies were all filmed at Christ Church, one of the colleges that make up Oxford University. Actually, one of the largest and most famous of all the colleges at that most famous of all universities. Well, Harry Potter is not the only one that had his origins in that area. For the cathedral that makes up part of Christ Church, in which the dean has traditionally been the president of Christ Church College there, it goes back quite a ways. For the cathedral was actually part of an Augustinian abbey from a number of years earlier, back into the late 12th, early 13th centuries. It was Henry VIII in the 15th that actually named Christ Church and collected parts of that abbey and that cathedral and made it all into one compound. Henry VIII, of course, was a man we consider of quite sorry memory for his life and the things that he did, especially the dissolution of all the monasteries in England. But before then, the Augustinian abbey was functioning and functioning very well, although it was built on the basis of a previous monastery that was destroyed in the year 1002 by the Danes. This particular establishment was originally a convent founded by Saint Frideswide. Saint Frideswide is the saint who we are commemorating today, whose name is on October 19th, and of course is one of the greatest of the Orthodox saints coming from the British Isles. Saint Frideswide was born in 650, and she was born to what we might call sub-kings or lesser kings and queens today. Safrida and Didon, her father, who early on entrusted her to the care of a certain pious nun. Now, Saint Frideswide was very much encouraged by this, and in fact took an early vow of virginity. She was someone who loved the Lord and was tremendously interested in the things of faith. So when she came of age, she was allowed to become tonsured as a nun. However, during that time, there was a certain King Algar, who was the king of Leicester, and she had caught his eye, and so he was determined to have her for himself, even if by force, if necessary. So he pursued her, and she fled to Oxford and tried to hide there. And here's where the stories diverge a little bit. One says that King Algar came and was blinded when he was trying to get into Oxford to apprehend St. Frideswide. Well, after being blinded, he repented, and then life went on its merry way, and St. Frideswide went on her merry way. The other story is a little different. It says that not the king, but instead his emissaries came to the gates of Oxford and were blinded themselves, whereas the king, thinking it was black magic, wasn't having any of it and believed absolutely that somehow a dark spirit had infected this and that he was going to pursue her anyway. Hearing this, St. Frideswide had an angel who appeared to her, who instructed her to go with one of her nuns to the river Thames. And so she did this, and upon reaching it, she found what looked like a young boy, all bright and luminous, who took her into a boat and rowed her to a different area of Oxford. We might call it perhaps a suburb today, where she stayed and hid with a keeper of pigs. Yes, a swineherd and his hut was to be her home for the next 3 years. Well, the king of Leicester was not happy with this, and he went to Oxford again, and he demanded that the people there who had hidden St. Frideswide before give her up and say where she was. They would not, and so he threatened to burn down the town, whereupon he was the one that was blinded for good at that point. Well, St. Frideswide, after having lived in the woods in this hut for now 3 years, finally returned to Oxford and there she established the church that would eventually become the cathedral, which would eventually become incorporated in Henry VIII's reign, which eventually would be the site of filming for Harry Potter. However, we dare not compare anything of the fictional Harry Potter with St. Frideswide, who was one of the great saints and who worked many, many miracles in her time. In fact, at one time, a certain woman saw that she was washing her face, and when St. Frideswide had finished, she went up and took the water and splashed it in her eyes because she was blind and received her sight. At another time, a young man who was chopping wood with an axe got his finger caught in the thing and yelled out in great pain, and St. Frideswide came, and by her prayers he was healed. At another time, she was approached by a leper who said, "St. Frideswide, Child of God, Holy Virgin, please kiss me." And St. Frideswide, after praying to God, went and kissed this leper. And the leper immediately, it is said, had skin that was as that of a young man. As her time of death neared, and she died around the year 735, an angel announced to her that that time was coming. And on her deathbed, she saw two saints whom she really revered, Saints Catherine and Cecilia, coming to her. And she prayed to the Lord and said, "All I ask is pardon, my Lord." And she reposed, gave up her soul to the Most High God, and there was a sweet fragrance that it was said filled the entire city of Oxford. Her relics, unfortunately, did not have such a great end. They were carefully guarded for many years, but then at the dissolution of the monasteries, they became confused with another nun who had become an evangelical and left her convent, and her bones were mixed with St. Frideswide's, where they still now reside in Christ Church Cathedral in Oxford. The Lord will do what the Lord is going to do, but one thing is certain, that he has glorified this wonderful Holy Mother of the Orthodox Church, and by her prayers may we all be as fervent in faith as was she. Bye-bye.